I don't believe in colleges and universities. I believe in libraries because most students don't have any money. When I graduated from high school, it was during the Depression and we had no money. I couldn't go to college, so I went to the library 3 days a week for 10 years. Ray Bradbury. Recruitamentary. Empowering your employment. Featuring our guest, Nathan Knoll. Today, we're going to have another special guest from iFuse Solutions, of all places, is going to be the Executive Director and CEO, Nathan Knoll. Nathan, glad to have you on. Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
So for the listeners who really aren't super familiar with, obviously, what iFuse is about and how it came to be, like you and I are a little bit more privy to, what's it about and really what is its purpose in the job placement world?
iFuse Solutions is something I kind of came up with, not coming from the staffing world myself. It was kind of one of those things that I saw a pretty big need for someone with my skill set and kind of my background to kind of enter staffing from a candidate's perspective, as well as from the client's perspective. So I had a unique kind of view of things. And quite honestly, when I got into it, I didn't know exactly what all I was getting into. And I really like to do things that way. I mean, I did my research. Obviously that, but I didn't go work for some of the bigger firms. Like a lot of people probably start staffing firms. That's what they did for years. And I come from it. I was an IT guy. I did consulting. I worked for hospitals in my career, for insurance companies, as the in-house IT person. And as my career kind of grew, I either was being recruited for other jobs or I was sitting in a seat where I needed to utilize recruiting and staffing firms. So a light bulb kind of went off in my head and came up with iFuse Solutions. We wanted to distinguish ourselves as, we work strictly in that IT vertical. And like I said, just kind of, got into it. We're coming up on to start our 5th year here. And, the rest is history.
That's awesome. And, it's really cool when you do have somebody who was originally a candidate. Again, not from that recruiting body of work, if you will, just being familiar with really both sides of the operation. I just feel that it allows the merriment of finding a job and also just being realistic with goals. Because as you've mentioned, there are very, very large staffing firms that personal approach and multi-touch approach, it just doesn't happen. They don't have the time. They may have the resources manpower wise, but it just doesn't feel the same. So iFuse, I feel like just from the website and, talking with a couple of people and obviously having Aaron as one of our recent guests as well, it just feels different, at least to me. And I hope the same for candidates who do cross paths with you guys.
And I love hearing you say that it feels different to you, because that was my goal, Michael. I've almost made it a point not to go to these bigger firms and learn how I don't want to know the nuances of how they do things, because quite honestly, even when I was being recruited, I felt like there was pieces of the puzzle being missed. The people who were talking to me about, hey, this particular job, I want to put you in front of this client. I thought, I don't know that you're asking the right questions. I almost felt like, and maybe this is just the CEO in me, I felt like I could do a better job, and I guess a lot of times, a lot of businesses that in my mind are really successful come with that kind of attitude. Whoever founded it saw a need in the market and they went for it. I was lucky enough to, have just such a supportive wife and family that allowed me to do this. When I hear you say we feel different, that's kind of our mission. You hear that from a lot of different small businesses. They want to, they got to rise above the noise. I want to be different. So to actually hear someone that kind of touched and felt our company from the outside say it's different, hey, that makes me happy.
Well, I'm glad. And again, it's true words. And this is essentially why, I'm doing the podcast and essentially the series, because there have been just so many experiences for me in the industries that I'm in. I cover quite a few. I mean, design, marketing, business admin, there could be temporary contracts. And it really just feels like a cattle call. If you were in LA and you're an actor, hey, this would be right up your alley, except it's for actual, normal day-to-day employment. Just having so many bad experiences so quickly and so back to back for so many years, I have a lot of good contacts and you seek out those people. I mean, it's the same thing when you go to a company and you deal with a manager or you deal with that specific branch. You're usually doing that because of the customer service that you're getting there. You can go to any branch of their bank or any of their grocery stores or what have you. But you go to that one more often than not, probably because of location. But if you have the option of 5 or 6 of them in the area, there's a reason why you go to that one. We've had a couple of conversations, prior to this podcast. It's awesome. You know what I mean? You feel that. And when somebody actually wants to make that difference and take the lead, you went from, again, being a candidate, being recruited and going, hey, I can do better. We can do better as an industry. And then setting forth and doing that. I mean, that's really commendable. That's essentially what we want to do. We want to have better candidates. We want to have a better vetting process and essentially just having everybody work. If you're working, people are getting jobs. It's a win-win for everybody involved. That's the whole point,
Yeah, I would agree. And, in business has always been, something that I really hold near and dear to me. I just have always been fascinated by the process behind it all. And when I was in IT as an engineer, I worked on like VMware type implementations or Windows type stuff. I never really got to touch the business side of it until I got into consulting. And once I got into that, I realized I could have a direct impact on my company's profitability. It was like sparks flew, man. I was like, oh my gosh, so I can be an IT guy and I can do business. Mm-hmm. And then when I, sought out staffing, it was that on steroids. It really drew me to it. But I will say this when it comes to business, because I do pay attention to different business practices. When you say that, it's very similar. Like if I've got a hardware store in town, and I've always believed this, and I preach it at my company, if I've got a hardware store in town and when I walk in there, I've got people coming to me saying, how can I help you? And then there's another one across the street and they almost dart down an aisle to not help me. That experience that you get at the one, I tell my employees, it comes from the top. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how a business can transform through good leadership of just practicing that customer service aspect. I mean, here at iFuse, I try to put that first, and I hope it's coming through.
Well, I mean, time will tell. You guys have been there for about 5 years. Got a couple of really cool people who I've actually crossed paths with. So I think you're doing a good thing so far, but again, having that trickle from the top effect, it is really critical. There is something that I've actually talked with somebody about recently about, the greatest lesson a boss can really teach is how to keep and compose themselves during an exceptionally hard loss or difficult time. Maybe you lose a good client or contract, or maybe just for whatever reason, something didn't work out. You had a bad Q3. I really would love to hear your thoughts, on the statement and that thought process and why you would think that way.
So I'm not going to come on here and act like I'm perfect. I mean, I make mistakes. I'm just like everyone else. I learn from mistakes, and I try to relay that down to my staff as well. As I kind of go through our attempts, any new business, especially when you're new, things are going to happen that you don't expect. Business it's a tough world out there. So we just, like you said, try to be an example for your people. Let them know at the end of the day, everything's going to be all right. So we've been able to do that. I mean, we've had some bad quarters for sure. And in the beginning, I can't say I was perfect. I may come in and I'm completely stressed out, but at the end of the day, sit down with my people. And I would say that one thing that, because I was an employee, I always try to put myself as the owner of the company in their seats. And I've been there, and I look at it this way. When you're looking at a mirror, a glass mirror, right? Like you see on the cop shows or whatever. Mm-hmm. On the one side, you can see through, and on the other side, you can only see your reflection. When you're the owner of the company, it feels like you can see through, but a lot of times your owners or your employees can't see you. They can see you from the outside, but they can't see everything that's going on behind the scenes. So, I try to have empathy for that and know that when I was an employee, I couldn't see all the things that I am going through now, the people who own the companies I work for. And it's been eye-opening. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I just try to do my best to put my employees first and let them know that everything's going to be all right. We're all going to work hard and things happen in business, and let's band together and get through it.
I had a boss one time that actually said the same thing to me, where you really want to address an employee's fears, needs, and desires, because that's really what we're all looking for. We all have fears. We're all human. And the ability to be able to relay that message, that empathy, that, hey, I am your boss, but you can come talk to me. You can trust me. We're all going to work hard, but at the end of the day, it's going to work out. It is something that I feel with smaller companies, it's definitely easier to do. You lose it as you grow too big, because again, that becomes more of an HR aspect, and they may not handle things the same way as a smaller company or as a CEO. But, also if there is bad boss tactics and practices. You're going to feel it. You're going to see it. And it is really going to demoralize your employees if they see that, hey, we should be acting this way, or we are told this or that, and then it doesn't follow through. You know what I mean?
I do. And I fear that as we grow too. I mean, we do want to grow at iFuse. I mean, we want to take what we're doing and show the rest of the world. We are going to lose a little bit of that. My example, the hardware store, those are huge companies. And it is a completely different feel when you walk into those places. And that always kind of fascinates me because it comes from somewhere. Mm-hmm. It starts somewhere and it trickles down through. And it's amazing that you got those huge companies that do basically the same thing. And you have completely different experiences as a customer walking into them. So you may lose a little bit of that, but there's also, as long as you have your finger on the pulse and you care and you do have that empathy for your employees, you should still be able to get the experience you want.
I agree. Switching around now, so looking towards, candidates that you've worked with or that you may potentially be working with, from your experience, also being a candidate yourself, and now really focusing that hardened talent into, I like to say, the canvassing of careers. What are 3 solid points that candidates can really focus in on that you could share that they could benefit from during their job search?
Well, the first thing that I really have noticed is when I got into this, and I saw this as a candidate, and this is where I can kind of relay how I felt being recruited and where I thought there could be a better job being done. It's all about the keywords on the resume. That's first and foremost. I mean, if you know it, put it on the resume. That's how recruiters and whether it's an internal recruiter at a big shop or it's a staffing agency, they're looking for keywords on a resume or your LinkedIn profile, stuff like that. So if you know it, definitely put it on there. You never know when one little thing that you think is insignificant, as a small little application I worked on, is important, because there could be someone out there that's like, man, I really want someone with this skill, but if they can match it with this, it's my perfect candidate. Well, a lot of times candidates may think, well, I don't need to put that on there. So I would say definitely, keeping an up-to-date resume and having yourself out there is important. From the human aspect of it, since I've been on this side of it and I've been working with, HR side of the business and people who are looking to hire, it's all about culture. Show your personality in an interview, even when you're talking to that recruiter. I can't express enough how important that is to show who you are, because at the end of the day, who you are might not fit over here, but it will fit somewhere. There is a home for everyone. And, when I kind of got in and saw it from this light, I realized how important that personality piece is. We all got to have the skills. You're going to work with a group of people every day, and you need to match. You got to be cohesive with those so you can grow, you can flourish, and be successful in that job. So, that's one. Culture would be 2. And 3, be responsive, be on top of your game. If someone says they're going to call you at 6 o'clock, please be ready for the phone and be ready to answer questions. That goes a long way. I realize now when I'm working with people, when they're punctual, when they're on top of it, when they're answering questions that maybe I was getting ready to ask before I even asked it, they're on top of their game. I can't wait to get that candidate in front of my client, multiple clients. This guy is this woman is just, a rock star. They're very employable, and they are not only going to make iFuse look good, right? I mean, that's part of it, is we need to do our job. Companies are paying us to do a service, but it makes them look good, and everyone's happy in that. So just being on top of your game. At iFuse, we have a lot of little sayings that we use, or slogans, I guess, and being on it is one of them. Like if you go to our website and check out our blog, and being on it is one of them. And then we just, if you do that, it's going to open a lot of doors for you.
I like that. That's valid. And it's the easiest thing to be is just be yourself. Don't be obnoxious. But, if you feel a certain way about how you do things, that's your style. That's what sets you apart from other talent. And also people like that. If you humanize what you're about or your interest. I've had a lot of those conversations. I remember having interviews with Apple, and they literally talked little to nothing about what your experiences have been in the past working wise. They literally made the first 2 or 3 rounds of interviews about you, what you're about, what's your passions, what do you do on the weekend, what do you do with family. They really want to know what you're about, because again, this is your work family. You spend probably 75% 75% of your day-to-day operations with these individuals. So it really needs to be a good fit. And, you want to know that when you're done, maybe you want to grab a bite to eat with somebody after work or something like that, go to an event together, and know that you can do that without any problems.
Well, and I'd say, along with that, just being truthful, and that's part of like you're showing your personality. I mean, it does no one any good to go tell someone what you think they want to hear, because quite honestly, you may be doing that and it's turning them off a little bit. When if you would just be yourself and give truthful answers, they're like, that's what I was looking for.
It also feels more authentic as well. I mean, if you're being yourself, again, it's the easiest person to be, so if this is how I feel, this is how I am. And there's a value behind that as well. It's great to have a narrative, but I mean, again, there's so much editing going on for that. It's just not necessary. I do, again, when you're talking with people, and that's just how I am, especially with these podcasts, I love the opportunity that you do get a chance to get to know somebody and you are able to, let's say if you go to an interview, you're prepping for an interview, right? There's so much tension, pressure, focus. I love the interviews where the hiring manager comes out or the recruiter comes out and says, hey, we're going to step, next door. There's a Starbucks there or something. Let's sit down. Let's grab a bite to eat or something like that. And it's such a no pressure situation. You get more legitimate answers, more, authentic responses from somebody because you're actually having a conversation. That's essentially what an interview is. It's a conversation of information between two parties, that you're passing back and forth, and you're looking for certain answers, sure, but you're still wanting to get to know that person. That's the whole point.
Absolutely. Yeah. And listen, as the owner of my company, so I have to now interview people to join iFuse and join our calls and be a part of what we are. And it's such an important thing to get that right. I try to make it as relaxed as possible, but you also got to understand that these people, they're going for a job. Making that relaxed is really important. And it's a skill. Good interviewers, good hiring managers, kind of innate to them. It's just one of the abilities they have.
And that's the finesse. It's really an art, just like negotiation or closing a sale, just that finesse of being able to talk to somebody and get to know them and remember what they're about and getting that critical information, obviously, that you're there for. There is really a dexterity, to it, if you will. So as you are obviously, looking for individuals to join the iFuse crew and you're talking to candidates in general, was there really anybody specifically who just really stood out or impressed you during an interview or a meeting or something like that in your minds over the past couple of years?
When I'm hiring for iFuse, one of the things that it's important to everyone, and money is an issue that everyone's got to navigate. We do have to talk about it. I mean, you do work to support your life and not the other way around. But when I get people that, when I'm talking about my shop, that I talk to that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and you can tell, and it comes through on that, I can't wait to bring them onto the team. And because we're a startup, getting people that, look at that and look at the potential of the opportunity in front of them rather than, hey, I just got to have this dollar amount. If it's all about the money to you, iFuse probably isn't your spot. And a lot of our clients are the same exact way. But, and I do say that understanding that, listen, at the end of the day, we all do need to feed our families. So it is important, and I would say, over time, we've gotten really good at just kind of navigating that. Let's get it on the table. I'm not going to ask you what you were making before. I'm going to ask you for this opportunity. What is your target? Where do you want to be? Where are you comfortable? Because that in itself, I like to say, most people look at that as the most important thing when taking a job is that finance piece. If I can just take care of that and say, listen, that's going to be good. You fit culturally here. The money piece is just, we got to get that out of the way. And I don't want to have to worry about it again because I want to work with you personally. That's really, so when I meet people like that, and I would say Erin Stahl, someone that's, joined iFuse, she is just a rock star in every facet. She's been promoted now. She's in charge of our business development, and she came with that attitude, and she just thoroughly impressed me. And she's, done that with everyone that I've put her in front of, from a business standpoint. I get a lot of people coming back, and but it's not just Erin. Melissa Moskalink, who works with us, she was my administrative assistant. She came with the same attitude. Tell me what needs done. I'm not afraid of it. I want to help this thing get off the ground, and it's just been fun to work with people like that.
Yeah, it's awesome. I know Erin quite well myself, and we used to talk. She used to be a rock star. I think she's more of a country rock chick now. But amazingly talented. What's that?
No pun intended, right?
No, absolutely. But I mean, amazingly gifted individual. Anybody who I know who is going to be really passionate about their talent and their art like that, and then also trying to support them professionally, I'm totally for that. And she's just very, very great to anybody who I've heard or referred to her or speaking to her myself. So it's just the energy about her is great. And if she is any example, I'm sure that anybody in the organization sort of beams that same, radiance of energy. And that's just cool. You got to really appreciate that.
That's right. And when you find a good one, Michael, you do what you can to keep them around.
So, are we talking about wives here? Or are we talking about jobs?
hey, both of them, right? Happy wife, happy life. That's for sure, All
right. Well, what I do like to usually wrap up our episode with is obviously being in the industry as much as you have been. There's got to be a ton of horror stories. So I usually say, share with us and the listeners, one horror story worth mentioning. And then to end on a good note, an awesome placement story or hiring story or something like that to wrap things up with.
So I don't know if this is a good story to tell everyone, but it's a horror story for sure. And it shows kind of what we did, and I'll try to make it short, but long and short of it is early in our career at iFuse, I placed a candidate, and you do everything you can to vet these, candidates, and you trust them, as their employer. He was a W-2 employee to us, and he got involved in some things with a client that we had placed him with, and it ended up there was some theft. Okay. But what we did was we made it right. We had to actually track down 22 laptops that were taken from a client. In the end, that candidate actually helped us do it all. So, and we hope that we, were a beacon of light for him. And so it turned out to be pretty good because the client then turned around and said, wow, I can't believe you did that. Most people just say, hey, I'm going to turn that into my insurance company. We didn't. We went and made it right. We got all of their product. We returned it to them. They are the biggest client of mine, for sure. And it's just really bonded our relationship. So that is a horror story that you probably won't hear from other people, but something we had to go through that we ended up making right.
That's awesome. Well, that's like a combination. It's a horror story and an awesome ending story all in one. So I like that. And it also shows just your flexibility and your willingness in the industry to, step out of the boundaries. As you get bigger, the companies, and I'm not going to name them because there's so many different ones that do the same thing. It's like a typecast. You know what to expect. You know that it's going to be just, a wash as far as for communication. And I was talking to somebody 2 days ago, actually, and they're like, yeah, we do this. Just send over your resume and this. And I'm like, okay, well, what kind of work? I'm basically canvassing, their dialogue. No, yeah, we do all, just send it over and a good time to call. I just, it's a total turnoff because we're not really having a conversation. It's really, you're trying to hit points as far as for goals and metrics. And when it starts bleeding through to be blatantly obvious that's what you're doing, it's just a cringeworthy time. You don't want to do that. I want to make it I want to make it a conversation. I want to make it, organic. That's the whole point of doing it. Yes, we have meetings and things like that, but don't make it that obvious, man. That's really, really bad. So,
well, right. And that's one thing I was saying. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but iFuse, metrics are, you got to have them to, as your own personal goals. But I try really hard not to worry about the metrics as much as just the process of getting there. If it's that, you should be talking to this many people or submitting this many people, we're always using those to see what we can do and create relationships. I mean, that's really what I want. I want our people to have as many relationships as possible, and true relationships, Michael. Erin knows you. And she knows a lot about you. And that's what we really like, is because when that job comes up, like I said, that culture piece is so important. If you're hitting all the marks for this client on that piece, the rest of it will take care of itself.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, they don't forget. And that's what I like. I like people that I can talk to, because the whole point of this is, again, engaging individuals, having good conversations, providing value on both sides of the table. At the end of the day, both getting what we want. That's the whole point of doing this. And it just can be done so much easier with the right individuals and just the right focus. So, Nathan, I appreciate it. You can find Nathan on LinkedIn. Also online directly at ifusesolutions.net, or also with their company pages on Facebook and Twitter. Again, really appreciate your time and being a guest on the podcast, Nathan. So thank you very much.
Hey, been a blast. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Have your own recruiter or candidate story that you'd like to share with us? If you're listening on YouTube, comment below. Otherwise, feel free to email your experience to ask@recruitamentary.com. You can find our full conversation of this episode on YouTube at youtube.com/recruitamentary. Thanks for checking out this episode, and feel free to like, subscribe, and share the content. A Mike Tech Studios production.